Hello, everyone. You are all very welcome to our second Link and Learn webinar of 2023, which also happens to be the European Year of Skills. We have therefore brought together a number of leading experts in this field to take a look at the challenges and discuss plans for the future. My name is Dave Farley, Head of Membership Services at Learnovate, and I have the pleasure of being your host today. We are delighted to welcome Stephanie O'Brien from the Irish Department of Further and Higher Education, Research, Innovation and Science, who will take us through the recently published OECD report on skills. We will then take our usual short break for some networking. Simply click the networking button on the left-hand side of your screen and join. You will be paired with another attendee, and to facilitate the conversation, you may want to take a crack at answering the following question. What is your organization doing to promote skills development on an ongoing basis? We will then be joined on screen by our four panelists who were selected for the range of contributions they can make to this conversation from schools K-12, higher and further education, and corporate L&D. Our panel chair today is Ciara NiFhloinn, Flexible Learning Manager in SOLAS, focusing on enterprise employees and skills. Ciara will be joined by Stella Collins, co-founder and Chief Learning Officer of Stellar Labs, Chris Vass, who is the Creative Director of STEAM Academy Pro, and Anne Devitt, Associate Professor at the School of Education in Trinity College Dublin, as well as Academic Director of Learnovate. Before we get started, there are a couple of housekeeping items to cover. Please use the chat on the right-hand side of your screen to ask questions of Stephanie and our panelists. We are also running a poll. If you would like to participate, just click the poll button beside chat. In order to make our webinars as inclusive as possible, there's the option to add subtitles. Simply click the CC button at the bottom of your screen. The slides from Stephanie's presentation, as well as other support resources from this webinar today, will be shared after the event, so please keep an eye on your email this afternoon. Now, without further ado, I would like to welcome Stephanie to the stage for her keynote. Welcome, Stephanie.
Thanks very much, Dave, and thank you all at Learnovate. I'm really delighted to be able to be here. It's a very exciting week for skills, for Ireland's skills agenda. As Dave said, my name is Stephanie O'Brien. I'm the Head of Skills Policy and Enterprise Engagement in the Department of Further and Higher Education, Research, Innovation and Science in Ireland, a ministry that is dedicated to skills issues and investing in people and the capacities and capabilities that they hold, a ministry that was set up in Ireland just 3 years ago this summer. I'm delighted to be here because the work that we do in the ministry is so aligned with the work and the mission that Learnovate has. And I want to thank Dave, Louise and Nessa for their engagement with us as a department over the last months. And I'm delighted to be here with some of our closest partners as well who are on the panel after this. It's been an exciting week for us because, as some of you will know very well, Tuesday, the 9th of May, marked the beginning of the European Year of Skills, and Minister Simon Harris launched that in Ireland on Tuesday. And it was very timely that we also concluded a project that took over 15 months, led by my team in the ministry, on the Ireland OECD Skills Strategy Project. And that's what I want to talk about today. So I'll just check, are my slides sharing? I'll share them now. There they are. Thanks very much, Louise. I think you've done that for me. Thanks. So I want to speak a little bit about that today, and just to mention what happened this week. The minister concluded that project that we led in partnership with the OECD by taking the report to Cabinet, to Government on Tuesday morning. We launched the Year of Skills on that day, working with SkillNet Ireland, our partner agency on workforce development, on Tuesday afternoon. And yesterday, Ministers Harris and Minister Collins also spoke in the Dáil on skills and the findings of this project, but also our mission and agenda on skills as a ministry. So I'll speak a little bit about that today. So I'll just move to the next slide. So just to give a bit of background for those who weren't maybe as closely engaged in the project, Minister Harris, along with the Secretary General of the OECD, launched the project in November 2021. And so work really got underway in 2022. And we published the report, as I said, on Tuesday, and it's up on Govt.ie it's a great read. I recommend it. There were 4 priority areas to the project, and this was all developed in a very consultative fashion, which I'll talk about in a moment, but just to highlight the priority areas that shaped the focus of the review. They were balancing skills, developing relevant skills over the life course partnership to drive the shared skills agenda and skills and talent as key drivers of innovation and productivity. So we looked also at governance of our skills ecosystem, lifelong learning, innovation as is there, and balance, having the right balance in our skills supply. So I'll just move on to the next slide. This gives a snapshot of how the OECD Skills Centre carry out the work and how we carried it out in partnership with them. So it was based on extensive policy analysis, international benchmarking, but also a really important process of widespread stakeholder consultation. And I'll just move on to the next slide to give a snapshot of how that took form. And many who are here today were really critical in driving this review for us in the consultative way. And the reason I suppose I'm stressing that is because for us as a department, that is both an economic department and a social department, both a department for the education of young people, but also the lifelong learning, the continuous learning cycle for all people in Ireland. It was really important to us that this project, that the process of this project be as fruitful as the outcome. So it's not just about the report itself, but it's about living and breathing the really collaborative, open, dialogue-oriented partnership that is what we mean when we say that skills policy, and it is in Ireland and always has to be, as best practice says, based in partnership with industry, with enterprise, and with the broadest representation of what those words mean. So not just maybe for profit, but we also had excellent participation from the not-for-profit sector, is a huge employer, of course, in this country and others as well, and taking into account everyone on this call will know, that people don't stay in one sector or another, and that all of this continual skilling is about making workforce mobility a reality as well. So the next slide, and I won't go into the details too much, but just to give another snapshot of how we carried out the engagement. So Ireland has what the OECD would describe as best practice in terms of our partnership structures, and that's come from the National Skills Strategy 2016 to 2025 that we have in Ireland. And so we were able to rely on the structures of our National Skills Council, our regional skills fora, to drive out this review with us, and rely on them to bring in really rich regional perspectives, different size business perspectives, as well as having a cross-departmental project team. And that was really key for us, working across government as well, that because we do have a ministry dedicated to skills issues in Ireland, and that's a really important statement of intent and ambition by this government. But also, as many people around this virtual table will know very well, skills is not an issue that can be dealt solely with this ministry. It has to be seen as centre to policies that are being developed across government on whether it's the Climate Action Plan, our National Development Plan, Harnessing Digital, our whole of government digital transformation strategy. So that's been our work and our mission as a ministry as well, to make sure that we're working in concert with experts right across government on those government priorities. to ensure that skills is not thought of as a bolt-on or addition, but it is central. And I'll speak a little bit later about harnessing digital, our whole of government digital transformation strategy, just as one example of how that work has been realised. So moving on to some of the overarching findings, and these are some of the key areas that we've been bringing out, and the ministers for our ministry have been bringing out over the last couple of days as the report has been published. I can see that my arrows have turned into strange-looking hats there, but I'm sure you'll get the point on the slides. So some of the key overarching findings, and it needs to be stated, are that skills are a matter, they're essential, they're vital for enabling individuals and countries to thrive in what is an increasingly interconnected and rapidly changing world. And again, I probably don't need to say to anyone around this table, but the scale and the pace of change is what, of course, is different. We've known about the twin transitions of climate adaptation and mitigation, as well as digital transformation for some time now, but the pace of that change has accelerated to an extent that our report and our project is very clear that Ireland's skills ecosystem, which is shown in the report and is known to be internationally, to be agile, to be advanced, to be impressive, but it is now required to take a leap forward. So confident but not complacent, I think, is our watch phrase over these weeks as we absorb the findings of this report, and as we look critically at how we can build really ambitiously on the strengths that we have in our unique skills ecosystem. So I'll just move to some of the other overarching findings that are really important for us to pull out. So the first point there, that young people, Ireland's young people, are global role models. As we know, we are very above the OECD average in terms of young people completing tertiary education. We're very proud of that, and it's a defining feature of the success story that is Irish education. However, in terms of continuous learning, we do fall off a little bit of a cliff in terms of that ceiling that we are at in terms of young people. We fall quite far below top EU performers on continuous or lifelong learning. So this is the second bullet that's up on the slide there. Many adults do risk falling behind as they don't have the skills to thrive in the workplace, but also in life. And certainly that's a point, I think, to bring out in terms of how we went about this project. It was really important for us that this project was focused on the economic element on workplaces, because people spend a lot of their lives in workplaces, and the space that's made and the incentives that are provided to employers and leaders in workplaces for people to learn is really critical. But also it was really important for us not to have any sense of a false choice, that the skills for well-being, the skills for happiness, the skills for change in any personal life, whether it's logging on to your banking app or whatever it may be, that basic digital skills, or just thriving in terms of emotional skills, in terms of power skills, as we're now calling soft skills, more appropriately, that we had a project and we have a policy agenda that seeks to advance all of those, because there is no contradiction between them. So that the third bullet there is the point that I just wanted to pull out about Ireland's performance on lifelong learning. So this is a big focus for us as a department. It's a big focus for the skills ecosystem that we have in Ireland. And the ministry sits at the centre of what is a really advanced and large skills ecosystem. And I know some of you are represented here today. So Ireland measures at 13.6% on lifelong learning. That's the percentage of people who've engaged in education and training in the last 4 weeks, aged between 25 and 64. So Sweden and Finland are at 34 and 30% respectively. So we've got work to do. I'm just going to skip on past to some of the other findings. So you'll see there, I've brought out the employers' concerns about labour and skills gaps. And of course, the labour market is a more multidimensional issue but skills is at the centre of it. And the last bullet there, which was a really important focus for us in terms of the innovation and priority area, the management capabilities, the need for adoption of high performance work practices, that innovation is really more holistic than just maybe digital and technical skills, but it's also about how how workplaces are operating and how people are working together. So we'll just move on to say that there are 12 opportunities under each of the 4 priority areas. So that's governance, innovation, balance and lifelong learning. And under each of the opportunities, there are specific recommendations for those of you who may not have read through the report since it was published on Tuesday. And I'm just going to take you through quickly here the opportunities. So the opportunities in balance and skills take quite a focus on guidance and information. And those of you familiar with our skills ecosystem in Ireland will know that we have work to do in terms of assisting people on the navigability through the offering, the really rich offering of skills and often very subsidised upskilling, reskilling, learning opportunities that are out there. The system, it provides really tailored options, but it is complex to navigate. And so that's quite a focus for us. Under participation in lifelong learning, we're looking at the incentive structures that are there. And that's the recommendations that we do that in terms of individuals, in terms of employers, and in terms of the flexibility of the offerings, so that really people can be enabled to embark on an individualized and continuous learning journey that recognizes that learning as we knew it, or education as we called it, has changed. Our conception that it was something formal that happened to someone young, that's no longer the case, and that we need to fully take account of the fact that studying for maybe 3 years when you're at that traditional tertiary age is no longer going to equip you for a career that lasts 30 or 40 years. So these are just some of the opportunities. These are the opportunities that came out under innovation and governance. So I won't go through all of them. But just to point out that it was really fruitful endeavour for us that we took such a focus on innovation through the skills project, and looking at, of course, this important point that I know colleagues in Learnovate have spoken to me about as well, that it's not, of course, just about the accumulation of your skills or the development of a country's stock of skills, but it's about the utilisation and ensuring that skills can be deployed in the workplace and through the life course, with a particular focus that we need to take now on leadership and management capabilities, and particularly speaking to transversal skills and the work that's underway through our universities, our technological universities, through, for example, the Human Capital Initiative Pillar 3 pilots on transversal skills, and ensuring that skills such as connecting, collaborating, working in teams are valued, that we find ways to embed them, ways to assess them, and ensure that our stock of human capital are fully future ready. The governance of the skills ecosystem, I'll just say a couple of words on that there's a focus in the report that we need to take on ensuring, and I spoke to this a little bit earlier, on having a really I suppose, true and meaningful whole of government approach. We do have a whole of government approach to skills policy, but we need to reinforce that. We need to work now with our stakeholders on revitalising our National Skills Council, on looking at the skills intelligence systems that we have, and we have several excellent bodies in Ireland doing our skills intelligence, ensuring that we continue to have that responsiveness across our skills system. But we need to look particularly, as I might have said earlier, Ireland is actually called out by the OECD as an international best practice example in terms of the partnership structures that we have, and the report bears that out, that we are doing well. We're very good at speaking to each other. However, that's something that needs to be continually massaged and reinvigorated, and that's a piece of work that we are undertaking now that the report is completed. So looking briefly then at the way forward for the department, as I mentioned, it's the European Year of Skills. That's a really timely and welcome opportunity by President von der Leyen from the 9th of May on skills at the centre, ensuring a particular focus on workforce development, which is a priority for Ireland. And we're really glad that our partners, SkillNet Ireland, are taking forward that agenda in such a collaborative and dynamic way, and building on all of the workforce development and skills development partnerships that are there already across the system, and really supporting employers, and indeed working with Learnovate as well on that. Just some of our phrases that are our watchwords and our goals. That the global challenges of digital, of green, of transversal, of continuous learning, they're a challenge for the world, but we see this as Ireland's opportunity, and that Ireland has form on succeeding in education, on education being the cloak and the compass that allows us to thrive on the global stage. And so we would be very much intending to be best in class again in this new era of learning, talent development and education. Some of our focus areas are down at the bottom of that slide. On easing navigability, which I've talked about, on individualized journeys of learning, on short, flexible and blended skilling options. And you may know quite a lot already about the work we're doing on micro-credentials and recognition of prior learning through our partners in the HEA, and through some of our pilot projects that are really bringing out some critical advancements for Ireland, and ensuring that learning is flexible, learning is tailored, learning is different for each person at a different stage of life. And we're looking forward to how we can really mainstream the successes of that work over the next months and years. I wanted to take just a very brief focus on harnessing digital, just to show how skills in Ireland is a priority for government, and for us at ministry level, we need to start at this high policy level to ensure that it's recognised. So just in the top line there, it says skills is one of 4 dimensions. That's, for us, that's already success, in the sense that there's only 4 dimensions or 4 chapters to the harnessing digital strategy, and skills is one of them. That wasn't always the case, that it would be recognised as a through line, maybe through all the important priorities, but might not always be recognised as a priority in itself. We worked very hard across government on ensuring that harnessing digital, that strategy from the get-go, would have a focus on skills. And we've been delighted through SkillNet Ireland, our partners, to work with Learnovate on a very exciting work on identifying digital and data skills and what is meant by that, because of course it's such a vast and fast moving area. And we're also working with the ESRI on emerging technology skills needs. So it's an exciting area for us. I've talked briefly already about the work that is ongoing across the department, and I've mentioned a few of them on the slide there. I suppose maybe the final point to bring out is that the OECD report, and this is really important for us, I think it's balanced. It's balanced in the right way. It recognises all of the work that is ongoing in terms of what is, and we can say it, an impressive skills ecosystem. I have at the top of the slide there a unified tertiary policy approach, the establishment of a national tertiary office just in the last couple of months, that is really advancing pathways between further and higher education, looking at the establishment of 14 joint programs, I think. So this is landmark change for us. There's also funding the future. There's the transformation of the FET sector. There's a research and innovation agenda, new strategy, Impact 2030, that was published last year. The report, as I said, I think it bears out that we're doing a lot. But it also bears out very starkly, and this is a really important point for us as well, that if we want to be best in class, we have to raise that ambition level, we have to raise that investment level. And something that the Minister has been very clear about is that in Ireland, we compete, we trade, we have always be known for our people, for the stock of our human capital, the skills and the capabilities and capacities that they hold. And if we're going to continue to do that, that it's an exciting landmark moment now in terms of the investment we're going to make in really ensuring that the conception of education as we knew it is fully transformed, and we have a fully 21st century model of learning that supports, enables, and facilitates everyone through their workplace. And we're looking forward to the work ahead on that. So I just want to thank very much Learnovate for the opportunity, and I'm looking forward to the rest of the discussion.
Thank you, Stephanie. And as you say, a very exciting and indeed timely week for our Link and Learn event today, a focus on skills. We're delighted to partner with Stephanie and her department, and indeed SkillNet Ireland, on their various projects. I would now like to invite Ciara NiFhloinn of SOLAS to the stage. Welcome, Ciara. Thank you for joining us today. I'd also like to welcome Anne, Chris, and Stella to the stage. Ciara, I'm going to pass straight over to you.
Great, thanks Dave. Thanks Learnovate for inviting me along today. I am going to ask the panel to just introduce themselves briefly and explain their perspectives on lifelong learning and why it's important for them. So I'll kick off on that. So I'm here from SOLAS, which is the Further Education and Training Authority. So Stephanie's department is our parent department here in Ireland. And our remit really is to plan, fund and coordinate further education and training programs in Ireland. So that mandate covers job seekers, school leavers, job changers, people upskilling throughout the life course. My own particular focus is on digital technology and using digital technology to increase the reach, the range and the quality of learning experiences within our sector, and to provide flexible and accessible learning options for lifelong learners. So I'm very interested in the topic of lifelong learning. I am honoured to be joined today by people with such rich experience. So I might pass over to Anne, you're next on my screen, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself and your interest in lifelong learning.
Sure, thanks Ciara. So my name's Anne Devitt. I'm from the School of Education in Trinity College in Dublin, and I'm also the Academic Director for Learnovate. So my area of expertise is in the use of technology, in particular for language and literacy learning. And most recently, I've been working in the area of family digital literacy. So Ciara, you'll be familiar with this kind of work. I suppose we're looking at extending the reach of family literacy programs, so programs that work with parents to support literacy of children, but using technology to make that more accessible, I suppose, and available.
Excellent, thanks for that, Anne. And Chris, that might lead nicely to your area of interest. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, hello, I'm co-founder and creative director of STEAM Academy Pro. We just moved here to Ireland, especially to Dublin from Lithuania. We've been operating for 10 years in after-school robotics, and we were promoting STEM. So we gap the bridge between what is learned in school and how to transform it into applicable skills of real life by using the most advanced and most attractive tools for children aged 4 to 14.
Excellent.
And I'm very excited about joining you today, guys. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. And Stella, would you like to explain your involvement in lifelong learning?
Hello, yes. I'm Chief Learning Officer and co-founder of a company called Stella Labs in Belgium. I'm author of Neuroscience for Learning Development, and that's my kind of speciality, is understanding the science of learning. And I'm passionate that we need to get people to, certainly in organisational learning, to move beyond content and onto actually building skills. So as part of that, we use technology. We've built a platform that's kind of fueled by neuroscience and enabled by AI to really make sure that people apply what they've learned in the workplace.
Okay, great. So we can see we've very diverse perspectives coming from different types of sectors and considerations. So we should have a very rich discussion today. So just to kick it off and to give a bit of a discussion point, I'd just like to put out to the panel for their reactions a publication from the World Economic Forum recently, just to look at the international perspective. And they do a Jobs for the Future survey, which asks businesses to identify for them in the next 4 years what they are going to focus their investment on. And their top upskilling priorities for the next 4 years were identified as analytical thinking, creative thinking, AI and big data, and leadership and social influence. And I was just wondering for the panel, does that resonate with the types of things you're seeing? Stella, I might start with you, as you were mentioning working with organizations.
So it's interesting that those things aren't the things that are coming out to the conversations we're having. But thinking about them, it's really interesting because both analytical and creative thinking are skills that we need, but actually they're not skills that are taught, as far as I know, they're not taught at school, they're not taught at university, and they're certainly very rarely taught in business. One of the challenges is because they're actually quite hard to teach as a concept. You have to do it within context of something. So you can't just creatively think, it needs to be creatively think about something, so it needs a context. The AI and big data, that's something we are beginning to hear an awful lot about, and I think that's because for most people it's new, and certainly we work a lot with kind of training teams, training departments, and they don't know about it, but they kind of know they need to start finding out about it because it's here already if they don't know. And then the leadership stuff, that's been around for years. I think that's always been there. There's some dispute about how valuable is leadership training, because an awful lot of it is around models rather than actually behavioral training. So where something like social influence is really good, that's around behavioral training. And I think we need to get much more onto behavioral training rather than model type training, which is where leadership can get really stuck.
Anne, what about you and your particular focus? Do these resonate, or are they these completely different to what you're seeing coming through?
Yeah, I suppose what's interesting with these, the way these are listed, like you have to think of them maybe in terms of a taxonomy or an organization of skills. And I know in the slides that Stephanie had, there's one phrase there that caught my eye. It was like, not all, all skills have a shelf life, but actually not all skills have a shelf life. So obviously AI and big data will, they're new, they're what we need right now, and it's very much a jobs focus there. But the other skills, analytic thinking, creative thinking, and leadership, as Stella said, these especially analytic and creative thinking, they underpin, their transversal skills that underpin all of the things we do. So you can't do AI and big data without analytic thinking and some creativity. So, we have to balance that kind of notion of what is specific with the jobs focus, like AI, which is very much in demand and very useful, with those that are, let's say, core and transversal, and that they're going to be needed across society, that are for not just work, but for, an inclusive, equitable, democratic society. And so we have to be sure to read them like that. They aren't on a par with each other.
Absolutely. So we see the businesses reflecting the distinction there, but maybe not, diversifying between what are those core skills that they need over time, and then what are the immediate kind of topics that are coming under their attention. Chris, do you have any observations on that particular list?
Yes, I really like this idea that not everything can be taught. There's many things that can only be learned. And you can only learn it through experience. And because we work with students, our purpose, is to create as many diverse experience, which actually eventually will transform into ability to create, because ability and creativity is ability to combine old and known things in a new and unknown way, which are novel and useful. So we see that a lot, especially with today's younger generation. They have this weird perception that they're very technologically digital literate, but they're very literate as consumers and very illiterate as producers. So we really need to show them that they are tools of not time wasting, but tools of creative. So that requires analytical thinking, creative thinking, AI and big data. Yeah, it's a completely game changer for us, but we're already also including it in our topics. Also, even today, for preparing for our panel discussions, I was using tools as ChatGPT to help me find and better understand my perspective and prepare answers. So I think it's already became part of our everyday use as calculators and smartphones and so on.
Yeah. So back to Anne's point, you were sharpening your own analytical skills by using AI. So it's we can see it happening already in terms of how this works. And I couldn't talk to a group of people such as yourselves and not explore the topic a little bit further of how we should be teaching or how we should be encouraging people to have analytical skills and creative thinking skills. How, any insights from your years of experience in these topics? Chris, you mentioned context and teaching in the moment. Can you elaborate on that? What have you found to be successful with the particular cohort you deal with, which is young people?
Yes, so basically what we found out that the best way is to giving, accountability and not providing all the answers for them and putting them into context of stories. What would you do? And not tell them what to do, don't tell them how to think, and let them find their own answer. As an example, I would propose how we use it, in terms of math. You don't ask children what 2 + 2 is equal, but you ask them 4 is equal what. So they found their own way to the result that everyone is looking for. So that seems so far works most for us.
And Stella, I see you're nodding there in relation to Chris's comments. Does that change in a business context, or do you think that's a very similar process for?
No, I think it's very much around getting people to experiment, to experience. They do need at the start of something new, they need some element of guidance to kind of structure them, scaffold the journey. But then what people really need is to experiment and practice, and then to keep practicing. I think one of the things that certainly happens in business training very often is it's all event-based. You have an event, you have a training program, and then that's it. There's no opportunity or support to practice in the workplace, to continue to do that in the workplace. And that's where it really starts to make a difference. It's when you're actually doing it in the real job, in the real world. So, I mean, that's part of what we're, our process, our purpose is to really support that transfer into the workplace. And yeah, ties exactly with what Chris is saying.
Yeah, and building on that, Stella, businesses are experiencing skills gaps in these areas. So, what are the practical things that they can do to undertake it? How are you supporting them to build up these processes in their businesses?
So I think there's some really big picture things, and one of them, I think, for learning and development teams and organisations is to actually start to understand the process of learning. They've become completely focused on content delivery. I was at a conference last week, and there were hundreds and hundreds of platforms about delivering content. But it's because a lot of people don't understand what is the process of learning. And that process of learning has to happen in the learner's head, not in the trainer's head or body. So I think the big things they can do is use and understand and use the science of learning, really begin to get familiar with that, and then start looking at what's the technology that can really support that. And, and AI is going to be so big now, it's going to change everything. And it's giving people opportunity to practice and to experiment and to be supported in the workplace. And I think that's one of the other challenges. There isn't the support. Managers are too busy and again, they don't understand the science of learning. So it's really about, I think, getting everybody to begin to see. Everybody understands that if you want to play sport or learn an instrument, you have to practice it. But if you're learning something at work, whether it's negotiation skills, social influence, analytical thinking, they think I can just go on a course and then I'll be magically I'll have the skill. And you won't, you have to practice it.
We have to
Brains
invest
and bodies.
in practicing these skills. Yeah, absolutely. And Anne, for you, I was wondering, given, we want to foster broad-based education as well, not least for inclusivity and democracy, as you mentioned earlier on. How do we ensure we balance the focus on attaining those skills for the labour market with those broad-based programs? Have you any suggestions on that?
Yeah, I suppose when I was kind of getting ready for today, I was looking at that World Economic Forum report, and what jumps out is AI and big data. But actually, when you look at it, what's really there is that there are these constant underlying needs. I mean, in that case, it was economic or jobs, whatever. And then within that, you have peaks. But as humans, we're kind of hardwired to look for the new and the novelty. We're always we're always excited by it or threatened by it. So the report certainly from this week from the department is very balanced. They do use the word about the balance of skills to maintain that. So again, thinking about what's core, what are those skills that are core, that are transversal, that you need to be sustained across the life course, and certainly that thing about allowing people to practice, creating the context in which you can develop. So I'm a teacher educator, and I like what Chris said earlier about there's some things you can't teach. You can't really teach anything at all. You can only create the context in which people can want and need to learn, because that's where they're going to develop. So it's always having that emphasis around providing the supports, providing the scaffolding at the point where the learner's at, and You know, in Learnovate, for example, we have a project around universal design for learning, which would, you know, is looking at trying to adapt to the learners, you know, to respond to where they are at moments in time and create that context for them.
So having the learner right in the center of everything is your best chance of teaching something to the learner.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I suppose that leads on to some of the considerations I might stay with you on as well. You know, what we're talking about today in Stephanie's keynote as well is about really transforming a skills system for the 21st century to meet those challenges. And it requires a lot of collaboration, as you said, and it requires a lot of diversified learning experiences. But from your own kind of perspective, like, what are the challenges and what are the suggestions for what we could do better in terms of rethinking skill systems for the 21st century?
Yeah, I was thinking about the challenges from the point of view of university, and you know, the responsiveness there is a challenge because you have to balance speed with quality and validation. So you have to be sure that, you know, what you're offering can provide a coherent and consistent experience and can be, you know, mapped out into a broader kind of development thing. So that is a challenge, and you can't do that without resources. You need people and time for that. So, you know, while there are people from the department here, you know, that the funding model for universities is something that, you know, you need the time and the space for that. From the point of view of kind of the other, I suppose, the research side of my work, so let's say focusing on family literacy, for example, and there's a lot of kind of learning domains that will be like that. It sits across multiple departments. And so, you know, you have health, you have, you know, different, you've got TUSLA, you've got the Department of Education, you've got the Department of Higher Education, you've got SOLAS, you know, you've got all of these organizations, and that intersectoral coherence and coordination is, well, A, it's exhausting, but B, you know, it's absolutely required. And to facilitate that, allow that to happen, and to bring that into the funding models is really important, so that organizations that are local, maybe, that are doing great work with particular learners, don't have to spend their time trying to source 10 grand from one body and 20 grand from someone else in order that they can run this program that's really high quality. So those kind of organizational issues are really important.
So there are structural constraints, you know, and if we really want to have a whole of government approach, we have to be in government a little more agile in terms of how we deal with different departments. That's a challenge that we need to overcome if we want to realize this future of skills. Chris, I was wondering, you know, on the same note, just, you know, the challenges or the suggestions you would have in terms of maybe school systems, either internationally or generally, for, you know, a really 21st century skills system. What would we need to change?
I think that the most important part that we should talk about is that, you know, life is not a problem that we need to solve, and it's not, you know, it's experience that we need to experience. And in order for us to do that, we have to strike the right balance between required skills for the job market, for the labor market, and to raising and developing a child, a person that is well-rounded and educated about different cultures, about the world, about nature. And only by combining these two things, we can make a, you know, meaningful personality that could bring out changes that are inspiring. So I believe it's very important. That, and how to do that is, first of all, you know, focus less on subjects and more on projects, because and let children experience and be measured not only by the ability to memorize something and recreate at one place, but broader forms of assessment. Because I think now in schools, you know, you're just being assessed by where you're able to memorize certain formula, certain fact, retell it, while other types of intellects are being forgotten. So I think it's all about striking about balance and not requiring from school to be everything, because school cannot be everything. It gives you broad understanding, it gives you basics for what everybody has to know. But then, you know, after schools, universities, when you choose what you want to learn, is the place where you can, you know, get the skills that you're interested in and find subjects that you're really passionate about. So I think that's the main part. Don't ask too much from one organization or structure, and also take responsibility for your learning.
A whole of government approach, a whole of person approach, a whole of life approach so far is what we're suggesting, or how we need to change these things. Stella, obviously businesses do still need to focus on the skills they need to be competitive and to be innovative on the market. So what are your suggestions from that perspective in terms of what would need to change, or what we could maybe what the challenges are in that space in terms of skills?
So I was just reading some of the chat there, and somebody suggested that, you know, when people write a CV, it would be much better if you had your skills on your CV rather than, you know, kind of achievements you've made. And I think that's beginning to happen in organizations now. They're beginning to look at skills. They're beginning to look at transferable skills. What are the skills that you've got in this job that you can take into another job? And a lot of those often are the, you know, the people skills, the soft skills, power skills, what you call them, what you like. And really the key skill is the skill of learning. Because if we know how to learn, I'm not saying you can learn anything, but if you understand how that happens, then you can almost learn anything. You know, you've got a far greater chance of learning anything. So I think that's a really key foundational skill. And it's not one that is, it's not taught in business, it's not taught in very many schools. My daughter, for instance, was doing her GCSEs, and they gave, the week before the exams, they gave them a learning to learn course. I mean, it was pointless. She needed to have it, you know, 3 years before. So I think this idea of creating a learning culture where people know how they learn, creating opportunities where they can learn from that learning, so that kind of meta learning, rather than just continually stuffing content at people, and helping them recognize that these skills they've got are transferable.
Absolutely. Anne, are you coming in there?
Yeah, I was just looking in the comments, and just to kind of continue on from where Stella is, yeah, we definitely need to kind of represent what it is that we're doing. It's very hard at times even to articulate that to ourselves or whatever. So there's a really interesting project in Learnovate that's in collaboration with a number of higher ed institutions, which is looking at that, you know, how for students in collaboration with their lecturers can build that profile over time. So it's like you know, you have your degree award, but it's in parallel, you have that perspective on what skills you've developed and experienced and, you know, been involved in through the course of your program. So really interesting stuff there. Peter Gillis is leading that one.
And that word experience comes up over and over again. You know, it's again, you know, it's really what's coming out from the session. I think it's that we learn through those experiences rather than maybe sometimes formal learning opportunities, or, you know.
But I think it's understanding that you need to reflect on those experiences, because you can have the experience to just keep going, but if you don't ever look back and think, what did I learn from that experience? What do I need to do differently next time? And that's where I think structure and scaffolding can help people to begin to do that. And then that becomes a natural habit. Once you've done that many times, it becomes a habit to have an experience and think, yeah, that bit of it went well, that bit of it didn't go so well. What will I need to do differently next time? That is the kind of natural way of learning a skill.
So training our brains to reflect and learn.
Yeah. Rather than what we tend to do in business anyway, which is just throw information at people and hope.
Yeah. So we've been doing a lot of things over time, all of us, that haven't necessarily worked very well, but we have managed to encourage, you know, broad education base, and we've done amazing work in skills transformation as well. But what is very central, I think, to all of this, and it goes back to Stephanie's point, that access to these opportunities is not equal throughout society, and it might depend on your particular employer, your particular school, your particular area, as to how you're getting access to some of these learning opportunities. And I mean, a very big question, I suppose, but how do we build in equity and inclusion into this agenda? How do we do it in 5 minutes, please?
Oh, easy peasy. Yeah, that's the you know, the hardest nut to crack. So for example, in our PISA, you know, our literacy performance data in Ireland, we do great. We do amazingly well. We're like number 5 or something. And what's nice has been that, you know, that there has been a, you know, an increase, but and that has been for students who would come from areas that are socially disadvantaged or whatever. But the trouble is the gap remains. So we have an increase in everyone. We have an increase in disadvantaged students, but still there is a gap remaining. So, you know, I guess some of the work I've been doing lately, there's a lot of work, I suppose, around universal design for learning. So it's about, you know, very much putting the learner at the center and not thinking in terms of what they don't have, but in terms of what they bring. So, you know, my area is in language, and you have, you know, across Ireland, we have this incredibly rich language resource in all of our multilingual students. And some of the times in schools, people aren't even aware that they're sitting in their classrooms, you know, students in a French class who also speak 3 other languages and who can bring all of those skills to that class. So it's about thinking about who is in, who is in front of us, and trying to and it's not about adapting to each learner. It's about kind of attempting to remove the barriers for all learners. I remove a barrier for a student who's multilingual. Well, that helps the student who's dyslexic. So all of those, just thinking about it in those terms of providing that opportunity to access.
So starting with the equality of access and opportunities that are there in the system.
Yeah, and thinking about how, so if one of the barriers is literacy skills, we can use the digital to reduce that barrier for everybody, not just for the student who has a particular, focus. So thinking about using digital, but also using kind of the classroom environment to kind of think about pulling back on the barriers. So we're not thinking necessarily we can certainly think about groups that are in particular need of support, but just overall thinking about how can we let everyone into the same experience in the same way.
So building it in from the get-go really is how to approach that. Chris, and Stella, I see you both nodding your heads very vociferously there. Chris, I might ask you to come in on that around the inclusion and equity agenda.
So, but for me, yeah, as we know this from my point, I really like this analogy that is being used a lot now in the world. How, sorry, it's going from different it's said that we have overweight problem. Usually we don't have overweight problem, we have under muscle problem. It's not that, so the same is with learning. We don't have content problem, or we just have people that didn't have a good experience in learning, and they just found the one way, and they associate school with learning, when there's so many different ways, as you mentioned. Every student can become a teacher. Every parent, every community member can teach you and find a better way for you to understand that concept that was too difficult for you to learn in school. So I think we just need to present more ways of how to learn, and that would increase the equity and inclusion of everyone else. School is not the only way how to learn. It's very effective. We really need it. That's not the only way, and we have to communicate that more.
So absolutely, that lifelong learning agenda is how we're going to meet those challenges. And Stella, we spend a lot of time in our workplaces. There are sites of inclusion and equality too. Many insights in terms of the workplace.
So I totally agree with what Anne and Chris have said. And the idea of, if you take away a barrier for one person, it usually means it removes barriers for everybody. But I think this whole idea about using each other to learn from each other, and recognizing when we're learning in a non-formal setting, using the it doesn't need to be just the teacher or the facilitator or the trainer who's got the knowledge. Use what's in there. Everybody should be facilitating learning, creating that environment for learning, so that everybody can learn in a way that works for them. And it's not necessarily about being equal, because everybody is, there's differences, but it's about making sure that everybody can get to where they need to be. And I think that's what's really important, that we don't want to put people through a sausage machine and they all come out the same. We want people to have access to what they need to achieve what they can achieve.
So yeah, we want curious people who are having personalized experiences and flourishing in their work and lives and in society. I think that's probably a really good point to conclude on. that should be the purpose of our skills agenda, and should furnish our thinking as we move into implementation of all of these different policies. So on that note, I'll hand back to our lovely host Dave. Thanks so much, Dave.
Thank you, Ciara. Thank you, Anne, Chris, and Stella. Really appreciate you taking the time today to be on our panel discussion. And thank you to everyone for taking the time to join us at this Link and Learn event. As far afield as Canada today, we have 2 attendees from Canada, so you're very welcome. Some really great takeaways from Stephanie's keynote presentation and the very engaging panel discussion. We appreciate you engaging in the polls, in the chat, and our very popular networking. Our next Link and Learn event will take place on the 6th of July at the same time, and please keep an eye on your email and our socials for more details very soon. Enjoy the rest of your day.